the grain direction in this is up. Hello. For my opening gambit, I'm going to drive these nails through these pieces of spruce and see what happens. First of all, it's fine. It's not that fine, but it's finer than the other one. Let's see if the first one will go through. No. And do it in the second one. It will. How about that? I'm going to do one final test in this very unscientific investigation. This piece is skew cut. The grain lines are crossing more or less at 45 degrees, although it's a little bit flatter here and it's a little bit more quartered here. So let's drive a nail through this and see what happens. And that splits as well. Oh well. So what was all that about? Right, we are talking bridge plates here. This is a bridge plate, quarter sawn bridge plate, as is this. This is a block of spruce, and the grain direction in this is the grain direction in this is straight up that way. Middle of the tree was here, ring lines here, and if this is our general block of maple, but I'm using spruce here to illustrate, we have a choice for our bridge plate of grain direction. We can have it that way, with the tree going up that way. We could have it that way, tree going that way. We could have it that way, tree going that way. And in all those directions we also have a choice of the rotation. So we've sort of got 6 degrees of freedom, if you like. But we can, now some of these will, the answers to some of these decisions of where the grain goes are obvious. We wouldn't have it with the grain going up that way, because that's end grain. It's very, very weak, and it's very easy to break a piece of end grain wood. We possibly could have the grain going that direction, but there we've got the grain lined up with the front of the guitar, and it's not particularly strong in that direction. It's very easy to break a piece of wood. Famous last words. Where's a wider piece? There we go. If the grain is in that direction, it's very easy to snap it in that direction. It doesn't add anything to the strength of the top. So we want the grain pretty much that direction, okay? Cross grain with the front, maximum strength, in that we've got the stiffness of the spruce that way, stiffness of the maple that way. It gives us the maximum strength combination. But once we've decided we've got the grain going in that direction, we've still got a choice of how we orientate for us Brits, how we orientate the grain rotationally. This block is probably not the best example because it's effectively skew cut. The centre of the tree was about here. It wasn't a particularly large tree this was cut out of. The grains are quite, the grain lines, rings are quite curved. But there we have a quarter sawn piece of wood, and if the tree had been that direction with the cut through this way, then that would have been flat sawn. And in fact the first piece of spruce you saw me drive a nail through was flat sawn, and that just split apart. The second piece was quarter sawn, and the nail did not split it, which surprised me, because I think a lot of people would say that driving it through the flat sawn face is more resistant to splitting. Certainly from my experience of driving nails into pieces of wood and having them split, it's usually the one with all the grain lines on it. The flat sawn face, in my experience, seems more stable. However, opinion is that skew cut, a line taken with the grain running at 45 degrees. So if we cut through the middle of this block, then we would perhaps get a piece of wood more resistant to splitting. So why this obsession with splitting? A piece of maple is a fairly stable piece of wood. It's hard. It's why we use it for bridge plates. The bridge plate is there to give stiffness and strength to the top of the guitar. It provides a nice counter to the very hard bridge over the top of the spruce. With the plate there, it makes the bridge much less likely to rip off the guitar. It's a nice stiff sandwich either side of the soundboard. But the bridge plate on a steel strung guitar is also there to provide an anchor point for the ends of the strings. And this is why my obsession with splitting. Those ball ends, we don't want them splitting the wood out. We want a nice stable piece of wood. So quarter sawn seems to be a good choice. Flat sawn possibly as well. Flat sawn isn't dimensionally as stable, it can cup, but with maple I don't think that's so much of a consideration. Maple is a pretty stable wood. So I think we could go with flat sawn. Maybe we should go with skew cut. But I said that this was the best grain direction, perpendicular to the centre line of the guitar. Actually, there is a school of thought, which is something that I think I agree with, in that putting it skew, having those grain lines at an angle, is actually a better option, because what this means is when you drill all the holes through for the bridge pins, each hole is going through a separate grain line. If it was at 90 degrees, that set of holes would be running all along the same grain line, and you'd be halving the strength of the wood in that direction. You're cutting away so much wood, and you introduce a weakness into the bridge plate. If you've got it skew, that potentially is a much stronger bridge plate. I have a problem though, in that this is not wide enough. But in the great tradition of me sourcing my materials, I've gone back to the original tree. I have this. Now I can cut this a number of ways. I can quarter saw it, which would be that way. I can flat saw it, which would be that way, or I could skew cut it, which would be that way. Now if I quarter saw this, again I've got the same problem as before. I've got a bridge plate that isn't wide enough. It's barely wide enough even if I don't skew the plate, but if I'm going to skew the plate, I need 70mm out of this, and this ain't wide enough. This is only 50, well, it's 50mm wide. So I could flat saw this and get as big a plate as I want, subject to the abilities of my bandsaw and my table saw. It could be a bit tricky getting a wide piece of wood out of this flat saw. But I might try to get a skew cut out of this. But I think ultimately what I am going to do is I'm going to make 3 cuts from this, and I'm going to rerun that experiment again of trying to split it. I'm going to try and get a quarter sawn piece out of this, a flat sawn piece out of this, and a skew cut piece out of this, and see whether we can see the difference in strength, in splitting resistance, and we'll take it from there. This is going to be a tricky set of cuts, I've realised. I want to get 3 cuts out of this. I want to get flat sawn, quarter sawn and skew sawn. Skew sawn's the one I really want because that's going to be the wide one, but I'm going to be near the limits of my table saw. First of all, on this I want a reference surface. I can see the grain lines, so I need to take some off here. I don't want to take too much off this because I need the depth, so I'm just going to try and get this sort of level with this edge here. So, and I don't know how sharp my plane is. No, it's all right, I think. This is a waxed sole. It's slippery. That's completely parallel with the grain, but it just tails off a bit here, so I've Still want to take a bit down. Oh, this is not, this bench is not great for this sort of work. Yeah, that's just, yeah, that's lower than the bench. This is not great. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to try and plane across the bench up this end. Please don't treat this as a planing masterclass. This is not going well. Get yourself a decent solid bench. We're getting there. I think that's probably near enough. Just as with the spruce, I'm now going to try and split this here. So again, we have reference edges. I don't know that I need to be this particular, but I'm very limited as to how much wood I can get out of this, and I want to get at least 3 pieces, quarter sawn, flat sawn and skew sawn. It's the skew sawn one I'm most interested in, and it's the one that's going to be the trickiest, because I think I'm going to have to use the table saw, and cutting veneers on the skew, a bit of a challenge. This, I don't know, I'm not looking forward to this, but let's carry on. Yeah, not a very clean split. There's a knot just there, but that gives us an idea of the grain direction. And to answer a question that's often asked, my Shepak HPS20 bandsaw will cut 50mm of maple without any issue. That's actually, it was freehand. I find freehand cuts are actually easier, but that's a very good cut, very good surface. So yeah, quite happy with that. Yes, I've just broken my bandsaw blade. You probably heard the chatter. I had a quick look at the bandsaw to see whether I could see anything that was wrong, and there didn't appear to be. I don't know whether it's something in the wood, whether there's something solid inside the wood, whether there's a stone in there or something. I don't know whether my table saw will be able to cope with that. It should do, actually. Well, maybe not a stone. Yeah. This is the original blade, which wasn't very good. I'm going to have to order a decent blade. But I need to know why it broke. I'm sure there was a reason, unless it just wore out. I have been using this bandsaw quite a lot. Nope, no. Don't know whether the fault lay with the bandsaw or the wood I was sawing. Oh, I haven't got this loose enough, I don't think. Oh, there we go. I'll have to go through a setup on this, I think. Whether or not I filmed that, I don't know. Interesting to note, I was folding this blade up to put it away, and as I folded up this section here, it broke again. So it could just be that this blade was past its prime and it's just got metal fatigue running through it. I don't know, but I am going to investigate what's inside that wood in case there's a stone in there. I think that chattering was the clue. There doesn't appear to be anything inside the wood, so it may have just been blade fatigue. So I'm going to carry on, see what happens. This was the original blade, and I replaced it for very good reason. Look at the ridiculous angle this is going at. The blade guides aren't very good anyway, but they're just not able to keep the blade in line, and it's just drifting. I mean, I can try increasing the blade tension, but I don't think it's going to be any good, and of course the more tension I have on it, the more likely it is to wear out quicker, I think. I've got it fairly well tensioned, but that's just ridiculous. That's got quite a lot of tension in it. Yeah, not impressed. But, well, I suppose doing it by eye I can keep it online, but yeah, I'm going to have to wait for another bandsaw blade. Don't laugh, but I decided that because I didn't have a zero clearance insert, that bad things were going to happen if I continued to push this through the table saw. It was a very dodgy cut anyway because it was resting on a knife edge on the edge here, but I got it through this far. I can't really clamp this, so somehow I'm going to just quickly finish this off by hand, like this, I guess. Yeah, this is no fun. I've got the wrong saw here. I've actually got a rip cut saw. This is probably still not going to be much fun, but I'll give it a go. There we go. That wasn't too bad in the end. Finally, it seemed a bit of an effort, but we got there. There was a few interesting moments with the bandsaw, as you saw. I need to get myself a better bandsaw. And the table saw was all right, but my first cut with the table saw I did at 45 degrees, and it didn't give a wide enough bridge plate, so I had to then rethink how I was feeding it and have it near vertical, just off, and but we got there. Right, what I now have are 6 pieces. I've got quarter sawn, I've got skew cut, and I've got flat sawn. The quarter and this flat one probably aren't big enough for a bridge plate, but the others are, so that's good. This one's got a knot in it as well. But what we've now got is we have 3 identically shaped, same thickness, same size lumps of maple, which are quarter sawn, skew cut, and flat sawn. And we're going to rerun that experiment that I showed at the beginning of the video, driving nails through them. The idea being that it's the only way I can think of trying to simulate what's happening with the bridge pin and the ball end of the string, trying to tear the grain away and putting pressure on the plate and trying to split it. This might be a bit crude, it might not really be simulating what's happening, but let's just see if there's a difference. I've got a slightly smaller nail this time. I'll put the smaller nail through, then the larger one. If that one goes through successfully on all of them, I'll put the larger one through. So, right, let's give it a go. First up, flat sawn, small nail. I would have thought this would go through. No. I've got a horrible feeling these are all going to break. So, utter failure with that one. Quarter sawn. Quarter sawn works. Got to get the nail out. Skew cut. Does the skew cut one work? Skew cut works. Try the bigger nail. Quarter sawn, will this fail? Quarter sawn, great. This is going to be increasingly difficult to get the nails out. Skew cut. Skew cut fails. So, quarter sawn is the strongest. Yeah, there you go. It's just unfortunate that I don't have a piece of maple that is quarter sawn and is big enough. So I'm going to use my skew cut, which is almost as strong. But I think the results of this is don't use flat sawn wood for your bridge plate. Use quarter sawn. One final thought. Is that a Jerry Springer thing? Final thoughts. The fact that the quarter sawn piece won might be more to do with the style of the experiment, because the grain is probably more willing to compress in this direction between the grain lines, between the ring lines, than, for instance, than the flat sawn is. So that's that one, the flat sawn. Flat sawn is probably quite willing to compress in that direction, but probably not so much that sort of parallel with the rings, and hence the force trying to force the wood apart is less for quarter sawn than flat sawn. That's just a theory. This is a very crude experiment. A lot of people say that quarter sawn is the best. This experiment tends to suggest that, but I'm not convinced the method is sufficiently sound. I think the only way of doing this properly would be in a proper lab jig, pulling the pieces apart and checking their strength. I've seen people claim that skew cut is the best cut for bridge plates. So I think I will use the skew cut, because otherwise I've got to go back to my suppliers and get some larger pieces of quarter sawn. One other thing, these are all now thicknessed to I think 3.1 millimeters. I will leave them for a week just in case they move before I final thickness them to 2 millimeters. I believe is the thickness I'm going to use for my bridge plate. So stay tuned, make sure you've subscribed, and we'll get them on the bridge. We'll get them on the top of the guitar, and get the braces on and everything in due course. This is dragging on a bit, but I want this to be, this is a voyage of discovery. Take a journey with me. See you soon. Bye.